Thank you everybody for tuning into this video, and I'm going to get straight into it. So how do I swim this speed? And this speed is 1 minute 2 seconds per 100 meters. That is the fastest the endless pool goes. But as you can see, I'm not rushing the strokes. So how do I do it? It's no magic trick. I'm not speeding up the video or wearing invisible fins or some of the things that I've been accused of in the past. It's all about how to make yourself more efficient. So first of all, the body position. Now, when I was taught freestyle, I was taught to look forward and have my arms really high towards the surface of the water. Now, what that does is it brings your chest up, but it drops your hips. And in order to get your hips up, we have to push our back in an arch position, which gives you a curve, which gives you problems with your back, particularly as you get older, into 25, 30, 40 plus, you're going to start feeling that pull in your back, which is why I have an issue when people wear wetsuits with extra buoyancy in the hips and their arms are high looking forward and the hips are high. That's an arch. Poor boys do the same. So we want to find a way how to get the hips up nice and high, but we don't have that arch in the back. We have a nice neutral spine. And the way to do that is we have to push down into the water in the chest and rib cage area. What that does is it works against the water and it brings your hip up like a seesaw effect. So you've got to get your weight forward, and that involves having your head down, your front arm underwater lower, and pushing your chest and rib cage as if you're swimming downhill, because water is 800 times more dense than air. That means that we have to push down into water in order for the hips to come up. So that's what I'm doing. I feel like I'm swimming downhill. I'm not looking forward, I'm looking neutral straight down. And that's what we want to do. We want to be looking down to protect the neck anyway, but that also helps do that seesaw action and bring the hips up when you're on the side. More difficult when you're flat because you've got your frame, your chest, and so you have to press down even more if you were to swim flat. But I don't recommend you swim flat anyway because it's more drag and resistance, and by going on your side, not only is it easier to get the hips up, but it also is more efficient because you're cutting through the water better. If you want to have more detail on this, check out Ocean Walker Vimeo, my online coaching series. And it's unlimited access. It's £12 a month and you can cancel any time. Okay, let's get back into it. So what am I doing? So we understand that I'm pushing my chest and my rib cage down into the water to bring the hips up. But there's a precise movement that happens here to give me a glide in order to save energy in terms of how many strokes that I do. So what I do as I'm about to enter the water on top is I turn my feet in. So that creates a rotation. By turning my feet in, my hip turns. So it's not the chest drive, it's not my arm spearing into the water. It's actually a roll of the feet, which drops that arm delicately into the water so it's not rushed. There's no extension or spearing motion. It just is guided down towards that 45-degree angle. Now, by being 45 degrees down into the water, that takes my hip with it and my rib cage, and I go over the cliff, which means that the bottom hip and rib cage going down brings the top hip up. So it means there's less drag. What I'm trying to get is my hip as high as possible out the water. Now, by being high, that means, as I say, there's less drag, but it also means that my shoulder is higher. So when I do my recovery arm, it's effortless because I don't have to lift my arm overhead, which is the #1 creator of injury. You've heard me say it before. So what I want to do is a sweeping motion, and I've slowed the video down here. You can see it's like a semicircle sweep. I'm very low to the water. What I don't want to do is waste energy lifting my arm high over the head. Sometimes you see videos where people have got straight arms and they're doing this big high lift over the head. That can irritate the shoulder joint, and by lifting over the head, that brings the chest up and it sinks the hips. Now, the hip sinking, not only is that a problem for dragging resistance, it also hampers the leg kick because I have precise movement in the Ocean Walker technique, and that movement is a roll, kick and pull. So I talked about the feet turning in to take the arm into the water. That gets me into the flat position now. So I roll in, then I kick, then I pull. I roll in, kick, then I pull. So this swaying motion, if you like, this control swaying motion, I call it a pendulum, comes from the initial turn of the feet, which gets me into the flat position. And then I do a kick, which finishes off the rotation. And the kick is always a 2-beat kick. So it is a roll, left kick, left pull. So it's always the same leg and then the same arm. So it's left kick, then left pull. So if I kick with my, let's look here, left kick, it's left pull, and the left hip comes out the water. Then I roll back through the feet, and it's right kick, right pull. So it's a roll, kick, pull, sweep. Roll, kick, pull, sweep. That's the motion of it. And what that does, the kick almost acts as a pressure pad on the water. So it presses down, and it creates like this vum noise. So if you hear a smacking noise, so you see when some people swim, you see a lot of splash coming out the water. That doesn't happen with my kick. It's a press, and that press creates like a jacuzzi, like a hot tub whirlpool, because there's a pressure downwards, and that helps accelerate me onto the side. So what I don't want to do is bend my knee too much, bring my ankle out the water, smack the top of the water, and then I've lost that pressure pad that's just under the water. My feet are always just tucked just under the water, and the bend is minimal in order to press down, and it's like snapping. It's like a snapping movement. It's like a tail of the fish that presses down into the water, and that's what launches me onto my side. But the key is to get onto my side before I pull, because I always want to be on my side before I pull. But by doing that, it maximizes the momentum, so it maximizes the glide. Like a hammer thrower who turns around, that it does like a winding motion, a hammer thrower, and they go round lots of times before they release the hammer throw. Shot put, again, it's about the hip power, driving that back hip in order to throw the shot put. So this is about power from one side to the other to create that momentum, which comes from a roll, a kick, and a pull, as I said. Now, the pulling action comes from that low position. I talked about why it's lower. It's lower because it helps the hip go higher, makes me more efficient, so it helps me glide with that sense of downhill, but I have to feel like I'm swimming downhill in order to be high and efficient in the water with my hips. I want to ensure that the arm underwater is straight, that the forearm is lower than the elbow, and the wrist is lower than the forearm, and then it is the hand. So the hand needs to be lower than the forearm in order to pull water back, because if there is a break in the elbow and the elbow was to bend, then the forearm ends up higher than the elbow, and the hand then pushes water down. So we want that nice slope to it, down to 45 degrees, in order to push water back nice and strong. Now, when you are pulling, make sure that you get hold of the water with your wrist. You want to feel in the wrist and hand area as you pull water back, and you're going to pull to a bent elbow. Make sure that you don't bend the elbow first as you're pulling. So the wrist pulls back and creates the bend elbow, as opposed to you bending first before you pull, and then you lose all the power in your hand and wrist area. So that's how I get my power. I pull to the groin area because that's the power section. If I get beyond the groin area to the hips, I'm going to end up pushing water upwards. I'm going to use my tricep, which isn't as powerful as we know. Just think about the gym. So I want to be pulling to the groin, and then I maximize my power forward, and then I start the next stroke with the recovery arm. But at that point, I'm gliding because the momentum from going one side to the other. As I say, you can learn this through Ocean Walker Vimeo, or go to oceanwalkeruk.com. We've got lots of swim camps. You can come and see me at the Ocean Walker Academy, one-to-one lessons, or you can do it online as well, where you can get filmed and we can have a session. So lots of ways to learn this. And it is absolutely effective no matter what ability you have, from beginner to advanced. You just got to know this motion. Okay, so back to the stroke. So we've talked about the recovery arm being that sweeping motion. We've talked about the head looking down and the hips being nice and high, and pulling from that deeper position. And we've also talked about the leg kick. The leg kick is a press, so it's pressing down into the water, and it's a 2-beat kick, and it's the same side as the arm that's just about to pull. So if I rotate to the left, it's left kick, left pull. If I rotate to the right, it's right kick, right pull. Now, when you do the kick, it's important that the non-kicking foot follows the kicking foot. What I mean by that is, if you're going to kick with the right foot, you want the left foot to also go to the right hand side, because that's the way you're turning. You turn to the right, so you roll into the middle, it's right kick, and the left foot turns to the right to get you on your side. The goal is that your hip is under underneath you before you pull, which is why we do this precise movement. So it becomes a roll, right kick, right pull, with a non-kicking foot going underneath, and again, the same motion the other way. Keep your feet together. Make sure you don't bend your knees. In order to get this effective kick, you want to have a straight legs. So what you feel is straight legs. You will do a slight bend to do the kick, but if you imagine you've got bent legs, you'll bend them too much, the foot will come out the water and you'll smack the top of it. And by the way, when you're bending your knees too much, you're also sinking as you do it. So by keeping them straight, you're actually keeping them higher, as long as you're looking down and you're feeling like you're going over that cliff with that 45-degree angle with your arm and your rib cage going over. So always feel like you're tipped downwards to work against the water. Now we should talk about the breathing. So in terms of the breathing, by pressing down into the water, what you should do when you do take the breath is I push my temple down into the water that creates the pocket. Now you can see the bow wave that's created because I've got that big jet in my face because it's 1 minute 2 seconds per 100. It's really pushing into the top of my head. So I'm pushing downwards and I create that pocket. Now if I were to lift my head high out the water, then my hips are going to sink as well. I don't want to do any lifting at all when I swim. I want to be pressing down. So if I breathe, then I want to be pressing my temple down. If I don't breathe, I want to be pressing my rib cage and arm down, so I'm feeling like I'm going over this cliff. But when you take the breath, it's a suck in, suck out. So it's at the side of your mouth, Popeye style.